I get situated. It's hot here again in St. Louis, and my screen is dirty and everything is fuzzy. How are you today? Ain't that something about Dolly? I'll wait for to see if a couple people pop on. I have my comments turned off. I'm sorry. And I was gonna try to wear a different pair of glasses, but I can't see. I need to get some new readers. I can't see it all blurry. So we gotta do the usual ones. It's so hot here in St. Louis again today. I can barely stand it. I did some sewing this morning, piecing together things. I'll try not to fidget. It's hot. I'm uncomfortable today. I'm on edge today. I don't know what is in the atmosphere, but my gosh, it needs to stop. It really does. It needs to stop. But let's start with this Dolly. Everybody loved Dolly. Everybody loved Dolly. She was the one person that everybody could agree on, all in her glitz and sparkle and big hair and cosmetic surgery and her belief in humanity. Everybody loved Dolly. She will be missed. And I hope whoever is handling the affairs after her passing, I hope the legacy continues. I do. You know, the first thing I thought of was, of course, Kenny Rogers. You know, they had such a close, deep friendship. Of course, reuniting with her husband of however many years. You know, he owned a concrete company, I think. Did that all his life. Construction didn't change who he was being married to Dolly. You know, that's just it. Whoever you get involved with, you're not supposed to change who you are or what your belief system is. You're just supposed to come together in union and share in the differences and in the things that are alike. I have too much reverb in this microphone. But the one thing I did think about with Dolly, if you watch the movie The Coat of Many Colors, it's her life when she was little, and she was always impressed by the town prostitute, I suppose. You know, always enjoyed the makeup and the theatrics. And in the movie, the little girl is just fascinated with this painted woman. And that's who Dolly wanted to become. Well, in that movie, also, her mother had, you know, many children, 8, 9 kids. And each child, as they got older, every time the mom was pregnant, the mom said, "This is going to be your baby." By the time she was pregnant and Dolly was 9, 10, 11, she miscarried. And in the movie, Dolly's just heart-stricken, you know, a heart-stricken. She's upset. She's angry at God. How could he do that? How could he take her baby away from her? And the one thing I thought about with Dolly passing, she will be reunited with that baby. And that's the thing about the afterlife. Anything you've lost on this earth, you do get to recover in the next. So, for all of us Dolly fans, she will be greatly, greatly missed, and she was the national treasure. But on to the next thing. On to the next thing. Tonight for dinner, right now I have some tomatoes and eggplants roasting in the oven. I made a pasta salad with tomatoes Brussels sprouts, an onion, some cheese, some pickled cucumbers, and a macaroni noodle with raspberry vinaigrette dressing. And then I told the kid later on when he comes home from work to bring a salad home so I could have for tomorrow. So, that's what I made. Been still watching the Lindsay Clancy trial. Tomorrow, I believe they are going to decide on the verdict. I can't help but to think about those babies. Can't help to think about the babies, but I also cannot help to think she did not do it. She was coerced. And anybody who's been in a abusive, narcissistic relationship, in the very beginning when you're with somebody, they lay on that charm and they groom you, and only later on down the road do you really realize, if you were a smart individual, all that charm is really coerciveness and what they can talk you into until they no longer need you. And there's nothing more dangerous than a man who is calculated, who is trying to figure out how to get out of one situation to go into another. There are always repercussions, there are always consequences, and that's why I always say you must speak. Whatever the uncomfortable conversation is, you must be honest with yourself. You must be honest with who you're trying to have this conversation, and you need to be an adult, and you need to put all these things out on the table. You need to be able to hash out what needs to be said. Finding a happy medium with what you were looking for within the resolve. I'm trying to figure out these lights here. They're a little bright, and I got my front door closed, trying to keep the heat out of the house. Was outside earlier, worked in the garden a little bit, picked about 5 more eggplants. I have a whole harvest of eggplants. In the meantime, I'm waiting to see what the result is going to be for this Lindsay Clancy trial. And honestly, I hope they find her not guilty. And I know she will have to go into long-term psychiatric care, which she should. But the medical and the health industry failed her miserably. And any of you who have suffered with anxiety or panic disorders or postpartum depression or any form of depression, the sad thing about it is doctors are so quick to prescribe something instead of really getting to the root cause. And for everyone who says, you're off balance and your chemicals are all wrong in your brain, there are no chemicals in your brain to test. There is no test for that. There are markers. There is behavior and patterns that doctors have recognized, and within those markers is how they diagnose. Now, of course, again, like I say, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. You have brain sensors. You have your dopamine, your serotonin, your epinephrine, and I always forget what the fourth one is. But when people say you're off balance, the chemistry isn't right in your brain. There is no test to see because there is no chemistry, there is no chemical in your brain. And on top of all of the 30 pills that this woman was taking and being coerced by her husband so he could get out of one relationship to get into another, what's done in the dark always comes to the light, which brings me into what I want to talk about today. What side of the story are you on in your life? And what has been said about you that somebody has spewed so many false things against you that they have tried to sway a narrative so somebody doesn't understand the real story. What has been said and what part of whatever the story is are you believing? What side of that story are you on? And if you have heard something, have you gone to the source? Have you reached out to the person who you've heard all these things, where you have calculated an opinion by what somebody else has told you without really knowing the facts in that story? So what is the story? What have you heard? And what side of it are you on? And why is it most people are so apt to believe the person who's spewing this narrative, this agenda, without really knowing all the components that have taken place to make the story have any validity about it? We've all heard stories. We've all come out of relationships, and one person is, playing the victim, and the other person is just trying to move on with life, and one person is questioning what went wrong, what happened, why did things occur this way, because they could not speak. They could not have the dialogue that needed to be had in order for the story to have real life to it. Think about your own life. What's the story you've been telling on yourself? What's the story that you've been saying to anybody and everybody who will listen to you? And are you listening to yourself in the repetitiveness of the words that you were saying to whomever multiple times? What are you trying to gain from that story? What is it that you want the result to be, and what are you looking for to come out on the other side? Talk about that in my vision board class, when we're talking about all of the situationships that we've been in our life, our friendships, our family dynamics, the gossip that's been said about any of us, through work, the little cackles and the little, chats, the little team meetings you're not invited to, or the little texts that you're excluded out of. What is it that's being said? And if something is being said and you know it's being said, what are you doing about it? How are you defending yourself, or do you even feel the need to defend yourself? At this point in life, I don't care what anybody says about me. I don't care. I'm way past worrying about how someone's opinion should reflect in my life. Think about your own life. What is the reflection of the life that you were trying to live? And who has tried to come up against you for whatever jealous reason, envious reason, selfishness? Think about all the friendships that you have had in your life and the people that you have trusted, not only with your own well-being, but you've included them in like family. And somewhere along the line, somebody spewed something, there was a disagreement, and the friendship just ended because somebody along the line did not know the whole story. They did not know the whole truth. And how did that end up? Or what about the person who was doing all the gossiping and stirring up the pot? With a narcissistic person, they have all these flying monkeys. They have all these people that they need on their side so they know what is going on to make somebody else look bad. So what side of the story are you on? What part of that story are you missing puzzle pieces, and you're missing the true facts of what really happened in anybody's life? And what is it that you were trying to run away from So you don't understand what those true facts are. Again, I talk about that in my vision board class when we're talking about friendships and family dynamics and the people we want in our lives. You know, when there's a misunderstanding as an adult, you go to that person and you talk it out. When there is a disagreement, it is okay to agree to disagree, but you don't end a friendship unless something has been brutally on purpose done to you to hurt you or to betray you. But you don't destroy friendships because of a misunderstanding or one person believes this and another person believes something else. You know, again, it goes back to in a work environment. You go in, you're just trying to do your job, just trying to get through the day, and it's all you hear is the cackle and the gossip in the background. People who are trying to stir a pot, people who have egos, people who need to prove that they are in charge, and they're talking about everybody underneath them. And if they are gossiping to you, they're gossiping about you. So, what side of the story are you on? I would love to know. I want to know what was your part in that story and what was your validation for why you acted the way that you did within that story. You know, you can think about it. Think about it like when you were a little kid. Think about all the friends that you had at one point in time. You grow up, people go on and they do other things and they evolve and they move away and they accomplish all these things. Think about in your own relationship, whether you've been married once, twice, three times, however many times, and you are hearing yourself talk so bad about the other person. You are putting ideas in your child's mind about how bad that person was, because it goes back to when the child gets older, the child is going to understand the real fact and the real truth. And they do get to the bottom of it. But if you were constantly playing the victim and you were constantly putting the other parent down after you've left them, after you've divorced them, after you've driven them away, what gives you the right to try to spew the story, to put a narrative and an agenda in somebody else's mind? You don't get that right. It's not fair. It's not fair to that child. It's not fair to that other person. I always say, I don't hate my ex-husband. No reason to talk about him. No reason to say anything bad about him. He is the father of my children, my oldest two. There was something that when we were young and we got together, it was good until it wasn't good. So you think about when you were with that person in the very beginning, what was the motive of coming together with that person? What were the years that you were with that person and how many stories were created within that? And then when the relationship all fell apart, what side of that story were you on? Were you made to be the bad guy or was the other person made to be the bad guy? Why wasn't there to agree to disagree and have a life outside of what you once knew? Being the bad guy in anybody's story doesn't feel good, especially when you caused something. It's about taking accountability and about taking responsibility for what part you're playing in that story. So as I'm, watching this Lindsay Clancy thing, and it's got me on edge. It is, the whole story is so screwed up. It's absolutely ridiculous. If the man wanted out of the relationship, he just probably should have been more honest instead of calculating. And if any of you have been involved with a narcissist, and you know how that charm turns to coerciveness, and you know how when they no longer need you or there's nothing that they can benefit from you, they discard you. There's always somebody else waiting in the wings. But I'm Kitryn Marie. I reside in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm an artist, writer, speaker, life, and a business coach, published author When He Had Her, available on Amazon. Teach a variety of art and communication classes. My meeting yesterday went really well. I will know more by tomorrow. I'm rearranging my schedule for teaching at the college, where I was going to do a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at the college. It looks like now more of a Monday, Friday day and a Wednesday night, mid-March to the end. But when I know more on that, I will let you know. If you're interested in taking a painting class where we talk about perception, perspective, moving the paints around, it's $48 a person. I provide all the supplies. You have a minimum group of 11. I come to your location here in St. Louis, Missouri. If you're interested in putting a vision board together based in life coaching, where we talk about you being a product of environment, circumstances, and how it played in your favor, didn't play in your favor, the stories and the gossips that you were a part of that you didn't cause, but you seem to be in the center of it all. We talk about your career. We talk about how you even landed in the position that you're in. We talk about who your influences were and how the life you're living today is based on those influences. I also teach how to put a book together, the who, the what, the where, the how. If you're interested in writing your own story, putting character development together. And of course, if you have a business idea and you want to learn how social media really works in today's trend, you want to learn about going live, about being presentable, being able to talk on topics, and monetizing your hobby, just reach out, kitrynmarie@gmail.com. If you'd like to learn more about me, you can just Google Kitryn Marie. I'm probably now the first 5 pages on Google, or you can go to my website, kitryn-marie.weebly.com. Remember, fate turns on a dime. Flip the coin. What side of the coin do you want to be on? What side of that story are you on? And what part in that story are you currently playing? And what conversation do you need to have in order so you can understand all the facts and the true motives behind what was done and what was said and why it all went down the way that it did. But y'all take care, and I'll see you real soon. Have a good night. Bye.